The story you're about to see is a parent's nightmare, the story of a family whose daughter disappeared. When they finally found her, they had to fight just to get to talk with her because she had joined a cult. In this case, it was the so-called Moonies, followers of the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, head of the Unification Church, who became well-known in the early 80s for his mass wedding ceremonies. We were approached by this family during the summer. They agreed to allow us to document their search, hoping that doing so would speed things up or at the very least help other families. Here now is their agonizing story.
For a very long time, I didn't even know where my daughter was. I've never had that situation in my life, to not even be able to imagine in my mind what she was doing.
18-year-old Cathryn disappeared just after finishing her freshman year in college.
Cathryn, Jonathan would just like you to come down
Cathryn, please, I just want to say hi.
It took 2 months for the family to come this close.
I love you so much. I can't leave here knowing that I could have just given my sister a hug.
Still not close enough to hug. Their story began when they got this letter back home in California.
Mom, I'm writing to tell you that I'm going to be traveling around the country to work with alcohol and drug-addicted people. I can no longer be reached by phone, but you can write to me.
From this dorm room at NYU, the last place Cathryn stayed, their search begins. The next 2 weeks, they live with beepers and cellular phones, talking with police and lawyers, private eyes, and social workers. From them, they learned that this address Cathryn used belongs to the Moonies.
When I first found out, I just screamed. A whole night, I screamed. And then I realized that what I had to do was get busy.
Very busy. It became her life's work.
The unfortunate thing is, this is a group, you just can't go up and say, hey, I want to talk to my daughter.
Right.
Cathryn's mother, Cynthia, and Cathryn's 16-year-old brother, Jonathan, put together a team of family and friends with counselors who are all former cult members.
Could we ask her to come and bring one friend?
No, you ask her to come, period. See, she hasn't told you she's with the Moonies.
Cathryn's 80-year-old grandmother wants to know why the police cannot go in and bring out her granddaughter.
Why can't America somehow put its foot down on this?
We have freedom of religion, and everyone has the right to believe anything they want to believe.
And they're advised that legally they cannot hold Cathryn against her will.
That if the person is detained in any way, that not only will we leave, but we will notify the authorities.
It's going to be difficult. It's a delicate, you're going to get an Academy Award when you're done. The unfortunate
I don't want an Academy Award. I just want my daughter.
The strategy they decide on, mother and brother, aunt and uncle go to the house on Long Island where Cathryn has been living with 16 other Moonies.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm here to see my daughter, Cathryn. We know she's staying here, and we want to see her now.
Well, the thing is, I don't know what makes you come here, but this is a private house. Okay.
They know Cathryn's been living here. They know because 2 other recruits who just defected told them she was.
We need to see my daughter, and we need to see somebody in
Sorry,
charge.
she's not here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, she's not here. It's no problem if you would come back tomorrow.
No, we cannot come back tomorrow.
Well, maybe if you can give us a phone call. I mean,
No, we're staying here.
We're here.
No, we're right here now. We're not leaving.
You're talking to a desperate family here, desperate parents.
Just like to wait here.
Yes, I don't understand why you
If you want to
can't.
wait, you know,
Yes,
I'm
we
not
would
sure
do.
it might take till tomorrow if that's what you want to do. It's up to you guys.
We will wait.
After several hours of negotiating, the family asks if they can check Cathryn's room to see if her personal belongings are still here.
But you're not prepared to let Cathryn's mother go in and just see for herself? You can't do that.
Well, if
Has
you
anyone ever-
can't prove to us she's not here, then why should we leave under the assumption she's not here?
Has anyone ever...
Exactly.
Because you have no right to be here.
Patrick?
We have every...
We have,
Oh, my. Right, you talk about rights.
Excuse me. Is how I need you and how you needed me to.
As night falls, they sing songs they sang together as a family, hoping Cathryn will hear and come outside.
Now I know the woman that you are. You're wonderful so far, and it's more than I hoped for.
It has been 9 hours and still no sign of Cathryn. Exhausted, they leave, deciding they have no choice but to go to the top, to Belvedere, the Westchester County estate of the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Overnight, Cathryn's stepfather has flown in.
We've come a long way. We're looking for our daughter. and we have reason to believe that she's with the Unification Church.
Whatever your daughter is doing, it's of her own free will and volition. If you don't leave now, I'm going to have to ask you, well, you're trespassing. Okay, I've given
Fine,
you
here comes the police. We'll bring him down. We'll be happy to talk with him.
Within minutes, the local police arrive.
Officer, here's the problem. Our 18-year-old daughter.
The guard interrupts, insisting calls were made to the family.
They're worried about the daughter. Okay, sir, I told them. They have a headquarters. Yeah, they know the phone number.
We call that person from here.
Have a headquarters.
Yes, we call that person from here.
No, you can't use my phone.
All right, we've got a phone. We've got a cellular phone. We'll do it.
We need that phone number.
Cynthia calls her hotel to check for messages. There are none. Then she calls Mooney headquarters. She's told that no one's there who can speak to her. While she calls, the police convince the guard to call someone in authority.
So we should show up there at what time?
We should show up there
at 6 o'clock.
At 6 o'clock. Uh-huh.
Great, great.
Hi, we're here to see Cathryn.
Your mom, right? Okay. And this is NBC?
The Moonies call this Columbia House because it's close to the university.
She wants to see the media first. The media can come in.
We don't want the news to come in.
But they're out here.
First, the media can come in, and then what Cathryn wants, her decision is that she wants the media to come in, she'll talk to the media, then after that, after she talks to the media, she'll let the media out, and then you guys can come in and talk with her.
Come on in, you can get your story.
Our producer and camera crew are ushered into a once elegant brownstone on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Cathryn is waiting.
You must be Cathryn. Yes, I am.
But it's clear it was not her decision to speak to the media.
Well, what are we here to talk about? I mean...
Well, after you take your few pictures, is it possible I could talk to Cathryn alone?
I don't think so.
Why not?
Well, it would be up to Cathryn. I don't know what she said.
Well, it's all right with me.
Then they accuse our crew of being with the Cult Awareness Network. Not really journalists.
They're very afraid of attacks upon Reverend Moon. As you probably know, the media repeatedly in the past have spread a lot of rumors about Reverend Moon, have attacked him about many moral issues and ethical issues, and which as far as I'm concerned are really not true in terms of this idea that there's a brainwashing process going on. You know, no one has really made me do anything or made me believe anything.
Well, do you feel comfortable, for example, if I said to you, Cathryn, we'd love to go talk to you in a restaurant down the street, would you come with us?
No way.
Why not?
No way.
You don't feel comfortable to walk out the door and just take a walk?
No, absolutely not.
Would you be willing to meet with your brother?
No, not at this point. Not at this point. Really, I don't want to get emotionally involved about it, you know?
You're not interested in reestablishing family contact?
Well, my mother's here. I mean, this is family contact, you know.
Minutes later, they allow Cathryn's mother inside. The long search was over.
She said, well, maybe someday I'll be able to walk out with you, maybe someday. And it wasn't as if I was dealing with Cathryn at all. Of course I cried. Of course it was sad. But it was like a stranger. It was like Cathryn wasn't there at all.
Cathryn, I love you. I just want to see you. Because I don't know when I'll see you next, and I want you to explain to me so that I can know for myself why you can't see me. And no matter what's going on, I love you, and I'd like to talk with you for a minute.
No matter what's going on, I love you too, and I cannot see you right now, okay?
I know, it's heartbreaking. I know, you have to get involved.
There was a flurry of phone calls between Cathryn and her family after this meeting, then nothing. Her family has no idea where she is and hasn't spoken with her for 2 months. Kirsten Reed is a young woman who broke away from that cult just a year ago. Kirsten, good morning. How were you recruited in the first place?
2 girls kind of nervously approached me in San Francisco and mentioned nothing about Moon, just said they were students in a student group, talked to me about ideology and asked me if I shared the same sort of the world should get along kind of philosophies, and said they would have tea and coffee upstairs. They were right in front of their building, and then they eventually said they had a weekend program, like a youth hostel. Would I like to go?
Mm-hmm. And you said yes?
Eventually I said yes.
And then what happened after that?
They put me in lots of lectures and a rigorous schedule where I never had any time to myself. And eventually it came out that we were supposed to worship Reverend Moon, and slowly, after really getting us to buy all of their philosophies.
What about this whole concept of brainwashing, Kirsten? Did you feel like that was going on?
Not while I was there. I know I felt strange, and I kind of lost my self-will to do anything outside of what we were doing, because no one ever initiates their own actions there.
You became very dependent on the people leading the group?
Yeah.
Did they ever encourage you to contact your family?
Not at all.
Did they discourage you?
Definitely. They think that, or they make people believe that the outside world is ignorant and they're enlightened, so the outside world doesn't understand them and will ostracize whoever's in the cult.
Why did you finally leave?
My family figured out where I was based on a small phone call, and my grandmother, family friend, showed up, and they wouldn't let me leave with them until I promised I wouldn't, but I decided I would anyway.
And you had been there only about a month at that
Yeah.
point. All right, Kirsten Reed, thanks so much for talking with us this morning.
Thank you.
Ahead in our next half hour, we'll hear from a spokesman for the Unification Church. And we're back in a moment, right after this. In our last half hour, we brought you the story of one family's efforts to contact a daughter who has joined the Unification Church, the so-called Moonies. Here now is Dr. James Baughman, president of the Unification Church of America, and Stephen Hassan, an expert on cults and mind control. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Dr. Baughman, I understand that you don't like to be called Moonies.
Well, we put out a statement a couple of years ago saying that Moonies have been, the word has been used in a pejorative, derogatory sense, and we've asked that the public not use it.
What would you prefer to be called?
Members of the Unification Church. We feel that it's the same tone that people use in using other derogatory terms towards different races and nationalities.
And you don't like to be called a cult either, is that right?
Well, of course not. I'm a social scientist, and the word cult has social scientific and theological meaning in its proper sense, but it has been used in a very negative sense to suggest dangerous, destructive organizations which brainwash and commit mind control.
Yes, I believe that the unification movement is a dangerous, destructive cult, a pyramid-structured group with a man at the top who claims to be the Messiah, greater than any spiritual leader in history, not unlike David Koresh or Jim Jones, that uses deception and recruitment and systematic mind control techniques to undermine people's ability to think critically and to make people dependent on the group. And what I saw in the videotape was characteristic of what hundreds of other families have experienced, desperately trying to find their loved ones.
Well,
this is the issue.
Let's talk about the situation with Cathryn, the story we saw in our last half hour. I know that Cathryn's family desperately wants to be with her. They want to see her, spend some time with her outside the unification structure, outside the home where she's staying. If she still is staying there, I guess they don't know at this point. Are you going to speak with some church members and see if that can be arranged? Because for many people in this country, they feel that religion and family sort of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's true. Let me just say that the Unification Church does not have a policy or a practice, and never did, of breaking up families. This is a myth designed...
I totally disagree.
Let him finish.
This is a myth designed by our detractors, such as Steve Hassan, and they try to promote this myth for various reasons, as I may explain later. But actually, it's just the opposite. We're very concerned about values in marriage and family and relationships. Most of our members live in their home states, their native communities. They have families of their own and are in pretty cordial relationships with their parents.
But the example we saw in our last half hour certainly would undermine.
Sure, that's right. Let me explain about this example, because this just again promotes a mythical image of a situation that is not indicative of our church.
Well, let me just break in and say that I was a member.
Wait 2 seconds. Go ahead and finish, but fairly quickly, please.
Yes, Cathryn's parents acted in very extreme ways, which caused her to be concerned about what would happen to her. This concern is not unlike other situations that have happened in the past. The reason being, it's not Cathryn's parents' fault at all. They're being used by a group called Cult Awareness Network, which drums up fears of deprogramming and cult mind control, which has been debunked and totally rejected by the social scientific community.
Mr. Hassan, you don't believe that to be true?
And you see, Katie, I was involved with this organization many years ago. 20 years ago, I spent 2.5 years as a member and a leader. I personally intercepted letters from families, phone calls from families. There's no idea of individual free will in the organization. There's something where you have to submit to your central figure, get permission. Even in terms of the marriages, where Moon has the mass weddings, he'll say you, and you are told when you can see your spouse, when you can have sexual relations with your spouse, usually waiting 4 years or more. This organization is harming people, and yet it's using millions of dollars of PR to say, hey, we're just like any other religion. They're not, and they need to be held accountable for their policies.
Kirsten Reed, who was with us in our last half hour, told me that the organization was extremely deceptive in how it recruited her, and it in fact did screen her letters, phone calls, etc., and discouraged her very much from having any contact at all with her family.
Well, it was also very deceptive how hidden cameras and hidden microphones were used to get a lot of that footage.
Kirsten had nothing to do with the report. She was the second person.
Just that deception is used by people of Cult Awareness Network, Gail and Kelly, their security advisor.
Moon himself says God tells lies, and it's okay to lie when you're recruiting. In a speech on January 3rd, 1972, Master Speaks, printed by the organization.
This is hearsay. You were a member.
It is not. It is documented by the organization. January 3rd, 1972.
I think you need to get somebody fresh.
Let me ask you, Dr. Buffman, when our camera crew and producer, they were at the Unification Church site.
At that one,
right.
Yes,
Cathryn constantly had to ask permission to speak with anyone. Why is that? Why can't she, of her own free will, basically talk to reporters if she so chooses, or talk to her brother or mother?
First of all, her relationship with her parents is her own personal responsibility. That is the way it is with our church.
So then why does the church interfere with the relationships with families?
Because we're dealing with people who have already interfered with her family already.
No, they were not.
The Cult Awareness Network contacted her, drummed up these fears, and then played on the fears of the parents to extort, to invite deprogrammers.
I think the parents were just concerned because they hadn't heard from her
I know that.
for so long.
And when they found out, and this happens when people get involved or affiliate with any kind of organization. It's not just unique to Unification Church. My parents were upset when I joined, but they're not upset now.
Let me ask you, Mr. Hassan, do you think Cathryn will ever be with her family again?
I think that I hope that she certainly will. However, the organization instills fears, irrational fears, that Satan works through the ones you love the most. That's why she was calling from the window saying, I can't get emotionally involved with the family, because she's been programmed to fear it, as I've documented in my book, Combating Cult Mind Control, and many other good books written about psychological literature.
Do you think Cathryn's going to be with her family again?
Absolutely. This is something that can be resolved, and it's something that we encourage.
Why didn't you return the phone calls from her family for weeks?
I was not in the office. I was on the road.
Okay, gentlemen, you can continue to discuss this.
I certainly hope you'll personally intervene and see to it that she's sent home for a couple of months.
Anyway, I think...
Steve Hassan, you all continue this later. Thank you both. We're back in a moment. But first, this is Today on NBC. Of a California family disappeared last year. We were contacted by the family and subsequently documented their attempts to find her. Our report aired in November, one family's efforts to contact a child who had joined a cult. In this case, the Moonies, so-called because its members believe the Reverend Sun Myung Moon is the Messiah. After months of intense searching, the family was led to this house on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. While it looked as if the story would end here, it did not. Their daughter, Cathryn, refused to leave.
Cathryn, I love you. I just want to see you. Because I don't know when I'll see you next, and I want you to explain to me so that I can know for myself why you can't see me. And no matter what's going on, I love you, and I'd like to talk with you for a minute.
No matter what's going on, I love you too, and I cannot see you right now, okay?
No, it's you have to get involved.
2 days after our story aired, the Unification Church allowed Cathryn to go home to visit her family. She since has decided not to return to the cult, and this morning she joins us here in New York. Hi, Cathryn.
Hi, Katie.
Good to see you. First of all, let's just go back, if we could, for a moment. Why were you attracted to this organization? How did they get you involved?
Well, in a sense, one isn't really attracted. They recruit. I met someone on Broadway. I was living in New York at the time. They had a survey asking questions about things I was really interested in, and they happened to have an office in the building where I'd just gotten a job. So I went up with them, and they told me they were having a 7-day seminar on world leadership, which I was very interested in. And they talked about spirituality and leadership and family and things that were really important to me. So I thought, well, I don't know, this is not something I would normally do, but it seems like a really safe group, really supporting things that I support, and why not just see what they have to offer.
And it took, what, about a week before Reverend Moon's name was ever mentioned, is that right?
Yeah, I had no idea that it was connected with Reverend Moon. In fact, I asked if their organization was connected with the Unification Church, and they flatly denied it.
What happened next? What was your life then like once you slowly, I guess, became a part of this?
Well, I mean, your life changes. The one thing that's constant is your schedule is always packed. You always get up, go to a lecture, have a break, go to a lecture, have a break, eat lunch, you know, do sports, come back, have a lecture, have a break, have a lecture, you know, and then all the way up until dinner, you have dinner, then you do something like casual, and then you go to bed. So every day, from the time when you are just being introduced to the doctrine to when when you've given up your life to make money for Reverend Moon, what continues is your days packed with just doing things that are related to the group.
Do you feel as if you were brainwashed?
Well, brainwashed, or I think the better term is mind controlled. There are several techniques that almost any group can use on almost anyone to influence their thinking.
You also, it was exacerbated by the fact that you were getting, what, 3 hours of sleep a night, so you were very sleep deprived, is that right?
Well, actually, in my case, sleep deprivation was not the most important factor in the mind control. In my case, the control of information was much more important.
How was that carried out, the control of information?
It was incredibly strict. I mean, there were no newspapers, no televisions, no phone calls made alone. I did not leave the premises of their training camp for over a month. There is someone who's been in the organization a long time always with you. So you can't have conversations among other new members without them being aware of what you're talking about. So there's no exchange of information, there's no incoming information.
What about the efforts by your family? I mean, it was just so heartbreaking to see your little brother trying desperately, pleading with you to come and just hug him or tell him you were okay to have some kind of contact with him. Would they not allow you to do that?
Well, as far as that situation with my brother was concerned, I was instructed. I mean, I went to the woman who was my authority figure. I asked her if I could see my brother, and she said, no, no way.
And even when they finally acquiesced and allowed you to see your mother, you were very robotic.
Right.
Why did you behave that way?
Well, what mind control does is it takes away you. I mean, that's what makes it really so horrifying and such a horrible, dangerous thing, because the worst thing that you can be in a mind-controlled environment, in a cult, is you. I mean, everything that you enjoy, everything about who you are becomes satanic unless it can be used for the purpose of the cult. Otherwise, it's selfish, it's self-indulgent, it's for the purpose of Satan, you know.
A relationship with anybody in your family is self-indulgent and satanic as well?
Yes. I mean, I was supposed to give up everything, you know, everything from the past to embrace a new life as a follower of the Messiah, especially because my family did not espouse the same values that Unification Church espouses.
How difficult was it, Cathryn, for you to extricate yourself from the Unification Church once they gave you permission to leave? Was that difficult?
Well, I was having such a difficult time there by the time the Today Show had been aired, by the time I had been like slugging it out with my family for over a month. I mean, these people are like the most important people in my life, and
these people meaning?
Meaning my mother and my brother, and having to go through that, I was having an extremely difficult time in the church. And when I had the opportunity, I think, to talk to my stepfather. I think I was so broken down at that point that I thought, I may be rejecting the truth, but I can't go on here.
Before we go, and we only have a few seconds left, do you have any advice for other young people who are approached by these groups or by the Moonies or for their families? Well, I would say just make sure whatever group you're approached by, get information, make sure you get brochures, and if they say that you can't take a day or two to think about whatever they want you to do, then you know it's probably not a good group. Get information, take time away to find out as much as you can about who they say they are. Make sure you don't go anywhere with anyone who says if you don't go now, you'll never be able to go, because that's the way they get you, you know, and just find out everything you can, research, talk to friends, that kind of thing. And for people, for families who are people who are in the church or in any cult, I would just say, don't ever, ever give up, because there are people who've come out of cults after 30 years. And the worst thing that you can do is sign your child or your loved one over to a group that will steal their soul, basically. Okay, Cathryn, thank you so much. Thanks so much for coming in, and best of luck to you. I know you're going to be taking art classes, and good luck with your new life. Okay. And tell your family we said hi. And we'll be back in a moment. This is Today on NBC.